Hello, this is Steve with this week's YouTube English video for your Cambridge B2-C1 grammar this week. We are doing use of English part 4, probably the most difficult part of the grammar, most students would agree, because you are testing so much different knowledge. You're testing collocations from part 1 and vocab, little grammatical words from part 2, even some word formation. And a very common element for part 4 is, do you know when to use the ing, the gerund? Do you know when to use the infinitive in verb patterns and verb forms? So I have made lots of questions to test this specifically because it's something really common. And you're also just doing good general practice in how to think about part 4 and how to approach this task. So let's get into it with a little bit of theory first of all. We're going to start with the gerund. Starting with the gerund, we begin the class. I have got for you 5 rules of when we use the gerund in English, when you might not in your other strange languages that you speak around the world, and 5 sample sentences to show that you understand what these rules mean. You need to match the rule to the sentence. Take a minute, have a think, read the sentences. The gerund is underlined, the ing obviously. There is some kind of storm here, or they're doing some kind of maintenance. But anyway, number 1, the verb is the object of the sentence. Well, you could argue different things, but I think the simplest one there is sentence D. My favorite activity is this thing. It's a thing. This is where we're going to get into a bit of difficulty and detail about why do we use the gerund in English. We're thinking of the verb as more like a thing, a noun, an object, a concept. We use the ing. If we're thinking of the verb as more like an action or performance or something that you do, then we might use the infinitive. That's not going to be perfect because there's just rules and exceptions, but if we can have a general idea, that might help. So my favorite activity is this thing. It's the object of the sentence. Following a preposition is obviously A. After is a preposition. After talking, we decided to get a new cat. Subject is going to be B. Subjects go at the start of the sentence in English normally. Visiting Japan has been my dream. With other verbs, it looks to me like that's going to be E, because with I don't mind, we always use ing. Would you mind opening the window? It's rather hot in here. Would you mind opening? I don't mind. And other verbs like I fancy going for a drink later. Would you like to join me? I fancy going. We need to learn those verbs. So by process of elimination, the expression that we want is in C, it's not worth with ing, and we'll look at some other expressions in this video. That's the whole point of this video. So starting with a bit of practice for using ing with prepositions. We have got 4 use of English part 4 questions. Pause the video, write your answer. I will recap the rules now because we're going to be doing this a lot in this video. You need to complete the second sentence so it means the same as the first sentence, as close as possible in meaning. Don't change the people or tense or anything unless you have to. You need to use the word that I give you, and you cannot change that word. In this video, they are all 5 words maximum because I'm making it on that borderline between B2 and C1, sort of difficult B2, standard C1, ones that you should know for C1, ones that are like repeated patterns. So those are the rules. You've paused the video. Now we're going to look at the answers and I'll try and explain them. Here they come. Number 1, I'm really excited. The phrase you need is looking forward to. To is a preposition. You're looking forward to meeting the new coach. That's a common pattern for ing. Number 2, you're thinking, maybe I should do it. Well, you're thinking about or of. And if it's thinking of or about, that's a preposition. It's ing. You get the idea here. Number 3, I will continue with give. Well, something about continuing with give. You're not going to give up. And give up is a preposition. You will not give up drawing. I will not give up. I will never give up. You will notice the dividing line is because 1 point for knowing the expression, look forward to, think of, give up. 1 point for knowing that the verb needs to be ing, which is very easy when it says it at the top, but obviously in the exam, you've got a random question like this, you need to keep this in mind. And number 4, this is the most difficult one, but this is based on a real C1 question that I have seen. If he wouldn't let anyone else pay for the meal, then what was he doing? He was, I'm going to pay. Insisting, which is used with on, that's your little clue, you insist on, and obviously on is a preposition. John insisted on paying. There we go. So that's prepositions. Let's continue with our theory with certain verbs. This is a very brief list. I've tried to remember the most common ones that I've seen on these B2 and C1 exams. Obviously, you enjoy going to the disco. You avoid talking too much in class. You miss playing football when you were a kid in simpler times. You miss it. You are nostalgic for it. All of these verbs, when followed by another verb, that verb must be an ing. Here are some more examples, 3 more questions. Pause the video, same rules as before. Use the word, don't change it, keep the meaning the same. And we should have as our best answers, if you should really do something, I'm recommending it. And strongly collocates very strongly, very well with recommend. So he strongly recommended leaving because you recommend doing something in English. Strongly recommended, yeah, I guess you could also say strongly recommended that I leave because you can recommend, and then that I leave is like a noun phrase, so it also works. Number 2, we just saw mind in one of the other examples, didn't we? I'd be happy to help you. I don't mind helping your hand. What? Now we need ing, but we need something with hand. That means help. Giving or lending someone a hand. And it's you because the first question is you. And number 3, submitting work, suggesting, where you suggest doing something, because again, suggest is like recommend, is followed by ing. Suggested turning or handing in the work. To submit is to hand in or turn in. The clue was in, you needed to submit it, we need an ing. So there we go, that's our theory for ing with the verbs. And the last one is some of these expressions that I promised you we would talk about. Some expressions with ing, as we saw, it's not worth is followed by ing. So pause the video, write your answers for these 3. And we should have number 1, it's not worth. Take a trip with on, you go on a trip. So it's not worth going on a trip. Number 2, this one's a bit more difficult, I think. If you find something difficult, then you have a hard time doing it. It's an expression with ing. He had a hard time. Found it, past tense, had a hard time, and adjusting, because these are expressions with ing. The clue is right there at the top. And it's impossible for me not to laugh, then I can't avoid. But with help, the expression is I can't help, and you laugh at his jokes. That was a little clue. We need at, the preposition, to laugh at. That's the collocation, isn't it? So I can't help laughing at his jokes. There we go. That all makes sense for ing. And we've had 10 little questions there for ing. Let's do the same for the infinitive. I've got 4 rules for when we use the infinitive that I think are the most useful ones, and 4 sample sentences. Pause the video, match the rule to the sentence. And we should have number 1, can we see an adjective? Yes, in sentence C, unlikely is an adjective. It's unlikely to rain. I'm happy to help you. It's nice to meet you. Adjective, often followed by infinitive. Certain verbs, well, that was B, wasn't it? You agree to do something, you promise to do something, you decide to do something. Some common verbs that are always followed by the infinitive. Purpose is A, I went to the bank to ask. This is a common mistake in Spanish or maybe other languages where people say, I did it, I go to the gym for getting stronger. For getting stronger? No, to get stronger. Why do you do it? To ask. I mean, I guess you could say I went to the bank for a loan when it's like a more of a noun thing. But if you're saying why did you do it? To, then followed by a verb, that verb will be in the infinitive. So finally, the object of the verb, encourage someone to do something. So this is again like a verb pattern where you tell someone to, and that someone, his students, encourage me, encourage you. This person is the object of the verb. So the verb following the object of the verb is often in the infinitive with these kind of patterns that you see in Use of English Part 4. So there's your theory. Let's do a bit of practice with these infinitives. The answers are all going to contain infinitives. Firstly, we're starting with adjectives. Pause the video, take your time, have a think. These are complicated. You're required to, it's necessary to go through the steps to get the perfect answer. And now I will explain the perfect answers. Number 1, high temperature, it's hot. How hot is it? Hot enough to cook. Hot enough to cook. This is the infinitive because hot is an adjective and we're following the adjective. And obviously we use hot enough. Slightly irregular that we say hot enough rather than enough hot, but that's how we do it. And it was so high, past tense. Number 2, it is important, adjective, to, and now something about deciding things with decisions. Well, what's the verb with decisions? Make your own decisions. I guess you can also say take your own decisions, can't you? To take your own decisions. That's okay. Make just sounds a bit better because we're saying in general about making decisions in life. Rather than like take decisions, it's more like it's a 50-50, you have to take a decision. Anyway, number 3, we just saw this, didn't we? With unlikely to rain tomorrow. But here she is likely because the chances are high. She is likely to win. You can also say highly likely. That's a good collocation. If something is very probable, it is highly likely to happen. And we can use this with a person, which is a slightly different structure, more complicated way of doing it. Someone is likely to do something means it is likely that they will do it. And finally, if photography was prohibited, we were not allowed to what photos? You take photos. Of course, that's the collocation, is to take photos. As always, with these Use of English Part 4 questions, we are testing ing infinitive, but there's 2 marks per question. So we're also testing collocations, or, well, we see some collocations here in this one, or phrasal verbs, or word formation, or different things like that. Take photos. Last one then. Is this the last one for infinitive? I don't remember. We got a lot of practice. We have got some verbs that we often use with the infinitive, like hope, expect, decide, and so on. You need to complete the sentence, so it means the same thing. You know how to do this by now. Pause the video. And the answers are, my divorce was a surprise, then I didn't expect to get divorced. To get divorced. As we know, in English, we often use to get and then adjective to mean like a reflexive in other languages, to change state. I'm getting hungry. I'm more hungry than I was a minute ago. I got wet this morning because it was raining on the way to work and I didn't expect to get divorced. Number 2, you managed to do something. Did you manage to not tell anyone we ran out of words. We need another way of saying not tell someone a secret. What's the collocation with secret? You keep a secret. Did you manage to keep my secret? Nice trick. And number 3, if you're not willing to do something, that means you refuse to do it. It means you won't do it. You're not ready or available or ready to do it. And you give someone a lift. So they refused to give Sam a lift. All right, these are the last ones for infinitive, and our final bit of general practice with infinitive. And this is the pattern we said, like encourage someone to do something, urge someone to, ask, they're all the same. Pause the video, complete these sentences. Here come the answers. The instructor advised us to stay inside. Don't go outside, stay inside, or remain inside. That's the best way of saying it, is to stay inside. Number 2, open the floor for questions, invited the audience to do what? Ask questions. That's how we say that in English. You open the floor for questions, you invite them to ask questions. And number 3, this is a nice one. Your success is our goal. We want you to... It's the same pattern, isn't it? Want someone to do something. I often see this mistake a lot. People say, we want that. No, you want someone to do something. We want you to. Well, if it's success that we want people to succeed. Little bit of Use of English Part 3 word formation sometimes comes into it. We want you to succeed. Okay, there's plenty of practice. Let's round it all off with 5 questions on this slide and 5 on the next of general ing infinitive practice. You don't know what to expect, but you know the answer is something to do with verbs. Although maybe that doesn't help very much because obviously every sentence is going to have a verb and it needs to be used correctly. That's why this is such a useful topic for Use of English Part 4. Here come the answers, because you've paused the video and you've written your answers and you're going to give yourself a score out of 20 because we've got 10 marks here and 10 marks on the next slide. Number 1, the doctor told him to avoid eating, right? You avoid doing something and you tell someone to avoid doing it. Okay. Number 2, if he decided he chose to and you cancel it, you call off the match. So chose to call off the match. Number 3, this one's a bit more difficult. It's a bit of a inversion, isn't it? Only by turning up on time or showing up on time will you make a good impression. The will you has been inverted, but it's on time because you need to be punctual, and it's turning up but it's being punctual, isn't it, by turning up on time, because we had the clue of up, which means it must be turning up or showing up. Number 4, I take pleasure, I enjoy, and writing is getting in touch or keeping in touch, or maybe being in touch if we're being generous. And number 5, I really want to, I'm eager, and think of something new with, what's a phrasal verb with, come up with something new. We're eager to come up with something new. Eager is an adjective, to come up with. As you can see, 1 mark for each point either side of the dividing bar. You have a total out of 10 for this slide. And now we're going to repeat the exercise, because this is the best practice you can get, with my original questions that I spent the last day writing in class when they were doing an exam or something. Number 1, under no circumstances, typical C1 expression, and we need to invert it. Under no circumstances is parking allowed. Parking here obviously being used as the object of the sentence, well, the subject, object, depending on how you formulate it. Parking is not allowed. Under no circumstances is parking allowed. Number 2, another little tricky one. This led to something happening. We're going to need the ing because it's a preposition, lead to. The quality of the essay led to her being offered a scholarship. And it's also a little bit passive, isn't it? She was offered. This led to her being offered. That's a tricky one. But I've seen it on C1 exams, so we should be working at that level. Number 3, we saw how to use refuse. You refuse to, and then what goes with blame, as in accept responsibility. You take the blame. Can you accept the blame? That's a tricky one. I think some of my students might say that now when I do this with them. But take the blame is a better collocation. Number 4, you managed to do something. You succeed in doing it. And they finished without external help. They finished by themselves. By themselves, on their own. We know these different ways of saying it. And number 5, I'm not sure, then I'm reluctant. That's what it means. I'm not sure about doing it. I want to, but I'm not sure. I'm reluctant. And found a company with up a business. Your number 1 phrasal verb for Cambridge exams now, set up a business. Or nowadays, I think you probably can say start up a business, given how widespread the term a startup is. So that's probably acceptable as well. So you have a total out of 10 there, 20 in general. And you definitely want to be getting 12 out of 20 for B2, given that we've just been practicing these a lot, and we should be good at these. And probably 15, 16 for C1, because you should know, you should be, after this practice, you should be getting most of them right. That's what we want to be doing. And if you didn't, hey, you learned something. Fantastic. What I'm going to do in class after this is a little game, which I guess 2 truths and a lie. We know this game. You have to write 3 things, 2 of them true, 1 of them a lie, and then share with a partner, and you have to guess which one is true and which one's a lie. And this is great for practicing your sentences. I can say something true about me, that I enjoy eating peanut butter straight from the jar. And then I can say something false, that I hate, and again, ing, something false that I hate. I hate watching YouTube videos of people building houses. That one's maybe a bit too easy. But the point is, you're writing gerund and infinitive sentences in a bit more of a fun way in a class activity. And that's going to be enough for today. Lots of grammar focus, so we'll leave it there. Keep practicing. See you next time.